Hey mamas, I'm Brooke Miller, registered dietitian, certified lactation counselor, and a mama who has helped hundreds of moms feel like themselves again after baby, boost their energy, mood, metabolism, and even milk supply. Inside of the Postpartum Shift podcast, you'll learn how to take care of your health so that you can show up best for the ones you care about most. Each week, we'll tackle topics like nutrition, exercise, breastfeeding, mental health, and so much more. Plus, you'll get access to guest experts who will share ways to make your pregnancy and postpartum experience easier. Whether you're approaching the postpartum period or you're right in the thick of it, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here today to listen. And today I have a special guest, Stephanie Lopez, and we are going to be diving into all things regulating emotions, especially as a new mom, because there's so many different shifts and changes that happen. So Steph, do you mind just introducing a little bit about you, how you got into this field? And you just have such a unique history too with, where you've worked and what you've done.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me on today. So, like Brooke said, my name is Stephanie Lopez and I go by Dr. Steph, and I am a former NASA psychologist. And now I'm a healing coach. So I guide women, high achieving women, to break generational cycles. And most of my clients are struggling with anxiety or perfectionism or people pleasing tendencies. And most of them also happen to have an emotionally immature or narcissistic mother. And so when people hear that, they're like, wait a second, how did you go from NASA to this? Like, that doesn't really make sense in my head.
Right.
And so what I did at NASA was I had a pretty large job jar, but what my favorite thing to do was coach leadership team leaders on how to help their teams be more cohesive, more effective, happier, more productive. And a lot of times that came back to the leader. And I was helping those leaders to become more self-aware, more emotionally resilient, communicate better, and just more effective overall. And so when you think about it like that, what I was doing across leadership teams is to a large extent what I'm helping women do now. It's just a different context. It's a different audience, but it's really comes back to it healing for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's so important, and especially as moms. And I feel like you probably have noticed this as well, but I feel like once we have our own kids, there's a lot of things that come to the surface with how we grew up, that we didn't necessarily see or notice before having kids. And so
absolutely.
Can you touch a little bit on just the importance of regulating your emotions as a new mom? Like, why is this so important? Yeah. Why is this crucial? And how does like us regulating our emotions really even impact the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think I want to share one other thing about myself and why I made this leap. I'm going to start like in the middle and then kind of go backwards a little bit. March 2020, I had my second baby. And I was talking to my best friend last week and she's like, was that the worst year of your life? And I'm like, I think it was. I had already done so much inner work and I just hit rock bottom, close to rock bottom for myself. Mm-hmm. And my baby inspired me to make the leap and do this work. Now, I want to go backwards just for anybody who can resonate with this. So I took this workshop October 2013. And going into the workshop, I had these moments where I would have these big emotional breakdowns, and it was a reoccurring pattern. And I would have these moments where I would walk out of a room. We weren't teleworking back then. And I got upset like with somebody at work or in my personal life. And that could look like me shutting down, or it could look like me kind of criticizing or attacking them, depending on, where I was. And I would walk out of the room. I'm like, why why am I so upset right now? And so I had these moments, and maybe those listening, you had those moments too before you were a mom, but then didn't make connections until after you were a mom about, okay, I've got to fix this so I don't pass this down.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I feel like I'm a little all over the place. Sorry. But I did this workshop and it opened my eyes. I went in feeling like, is something wrong with me? Like, why do I have these emotional breakdowns? I felt like I had to hide it. I felt like I had to like keep myself controlled, and that this is a vulnerable share, but I feel comfortable sharing it. I felt like who I really was were these not so shiny parts, were these like bad, quote unquote, bad parts, and that I was pretending, most of the time. And what I realized is that wasn't true at all. And all this to say, that moment in my heart, I knew I have to spread this to as many people as possible, because if others are feeling anything like this, I don't want them to feel like that. I want them to know, like, deep down, how good you are, how you are pure love, even if you lash out, even if you get anxiety, even if you struggle with perfectionism and people pleasing, that those are all signs of defensiveness. That is not who you are. That is just a way of protecting you.
Yep.
Okay. So Brooke, let me go back to your exact question here. You said, what is the importance of regulating your emotions as a new mom? Let's just really start new mom. You have, for the very first time, probably done one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing in your entire life. And you are doing it while severely lacking sleep, with raging hormones racing through your body. And you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yep.
And neither does your partner.
Yeah.
And then everybody just like kind of expects you to go on about life as normal. And that can be in and of itself so dysregulating, because, and you'll have to let me know if this resonates with you when you were starting your journey, when you became a mom. Most people that I've encountered, they do not handle being bad at things very well. Right. Okay. So like you're a new mom, you're going to suck at it in a lot of ways. Maybe not the whole thing, but it's just not going to be a walk in the park, because nobody gets out free. Like there's challenges. They might be different. Maybe you have breastfeeding challenges, or maybe you have sleep struggles with your baby, or maybe you yourself have intrusive thoughts. It's the whole gamut, but nobody gets out for free. So one of the things that I like to talk to my clients about and think about is, when you were like, use your child as inspiration. When you were a child, when you see other children, how do they handle mistakes? Beautifully. Freaking beautifully.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll throw a tantrum and then they get over it. And then
they get over it.
Yeah, they get over it quickly.
And then sometimes they don't even throw a tantrum. Like if they're learning, let's say a quote unquote mistake in terms of like learning to walk. They just try and they fall, and they try and they fall.
They might cry, but then they get up. Yep.
And they get up. Over and over and over. They don't beat themselves up. Like, why can't you get this? You've tried so much. You should know how to do this by now. Like, they don't do that to themselves. They're like, oh, I'm frustrated. And then they try again. I call that toddler mentality. And that mindset alone is going to help you so much. And just recognizing, and I know everybody's like, oh, give yourself grace, give yourself grace. This is the hardest thing that you have ever done. Yeah. You're going to suck.
Right.
And you're going to get better.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's so true. We put so much, pressure on ourselves to know everything, do everything. And so much of motherhood, especially with the first baby too, it's so much trial and error, and seeing what's working in your household, what's working for your baby, what's working with your partner. And I don't know about you, but like my kids were very different in terms of schedules and feeding and like everything. I feel like the postpartum experience, even with the second, it's like I knew what I was doing to an extent, but in some ways it's new because
The
it's a
kid is
new
different.
baby. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's so true of like, okay, if I was a toddler, how would I talk to myself? How would I treat myself if I screw up? I love that analogy so much of like, because I watch my 2-year-old, try to do things. And if he falls, he might cry for a second and then he just gets back up and forgets about it and moves on.
Yes.
And they just kind of see everything as an exciting adventure. And I think that's something that as moms, how we perceive what postpartum is going to be like does play a big role. Like if you perceive postpartum as you're going to be tired, it's going to suck, you're going to not, you're going to struggle with all these things, that mentality is not going to make the situation easier. Or we can choose like, hey, I'm going to suck at some of this. And the more I do it, the easier it will become and the better I will get. So like just switching that mentality to I'm going to suck at this and that's okay. My partner's going to suck at this and that's okay. And we will figure it out together,
Because if it brings up feelings of incompetence or inadequacy, it's not because you are inadequate. It's not because you are incompetent. It's just because when you're learning, that's how it feels. And so what if, even if that insecurity is like pinged, what if you allow yourself to make that shift in your mind? I'm not actually incompetent. I'm just learning. And sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah. There's something that a lot of moms struggle with, especially in just like my program and stuff, is, they hit that 6-week postpartum mark and then they're able to work out again. And then all of a sudden they beat themselves up. Like, I'm going to the gym, but this is harder than it was.
Oh my gosh.
And
so much harder.
And the mindset thing I always tell them is you're just out of practice. You've been out of practice at least 6 weeks. You're out of practice. Your body just needs to get back into practice. It's not that you suck, you're out of shape, you've let yourself go, you're lazy. It's just you're out of practice. And that mindset shift has helped so many moms I've worked with over the past few years just say, oh yeah, I'm just out of practice with it. Of course this is going to be hard. And the more I do it, the easier it will become. It's the same thing with really all things postpartum, all things adapting to becoming a new mom. And, I know like if we are not regulating our emotions, this can start to tie into how we talk to our spouse, how we show up at work, how we treat our kids. Can you touch a little bit just on that as well, of why it's so important that we, identify and have awareness with our emotions and also learn how to work with our emotions? Because there's so many things stacked against us postpartum, the hormone shifts, the sleep deprivation, like you had said, and just how important it is for those around us, for us to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about a scale or continuum from 0 to 10, and 0 is like, I don't feel stressed at all. And 10 is like, I just flip my lid. A lot of times people will feel like, especially postpartum, when there's hormones, raging, coming back down, and lack of sleep and all of this new, people will feel like I just like went from 0 to 60 in like 1 second. And I remind them that's not actually what's happening. Throughout the day. You sometimes you're even waking up probably at a 7. And so really by the time you flip your lid, it doesn't take much if you're not regulating yourself. One thing that I like to share with people is, for us as humans, we upregulate, or we go into fight or flight automatically. Nobody has had to like think about it or convince themselves or tell themselves like, okay, like go into fight or flight, yell or, shut down or any of this. It just happens, right? And that's because our bodies do that automatically. The bad part is that we don't down regulate or come out of fight or flight that easily, like automatically. And so if you're constantly like things are weighing on you all day long, and that stress level is going up and up and up, and you're staying in fight or flight, before you know it, then you might lash out, or shut down or snap at somebody. And those are the things, and people who have a bit older children, they know your kids start imitating it. And really show you the mirror there. So one step that you can take, actually, let's do two steps, two steps that you can take to down regulate and lower that is a few times a day, just take 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Because sometimes when people are like, I don't have time for that, 10 seconds, and do a body scan just from head to toe, and just close your eyes and tune in and notice, where is there tension? Where am I tight? Where am I like clenching onto things? And just allow yourself to like melt in that and just check in and notice how you are. Another thing is breath is so important to be able to bring you out of fight or flight.
Yeah.
And if you would have told me this a few years ago, I honestly would have been like, oh yeah, I'm going to breathe and it's going to help me not freak out on people.
It's just that simple.
Yeah. It's just that simple. Like, it just doesn't work like that, people. And I was wrong. And sometimes it's not just, you know, doing a little breath work here or there. Sometimes, depending on how long you've been in fight or flight, it takes a protocol over the span of 10 weeks to get you out of fight or flight. However, 80% of our emotions need to be regulated in the body. And so that's one of the reasons why I do recommend breath work, and in particular resonance breath work, because we can use data from your body to figure out what is the right pace of breathing for you to bring you down, to ease that anxiety, to ease that tension that's there, to ease like any anger that's present or any resentment, because I know that comes up a lot postpartum as well.
Yeah, that definitely comes up a lot postpartum for people.
Yeah.
And especially their partners and all the things. I mean, it's just such an adjustment for the entire family to really go through. If you've been wanting to reach your healthiest weight and feel like yourself again postpartum without having to sacrifice your favorite foods or your milk supply, I've got a free workshop just for you. Inside of this free workshop, you'll discover how to boost energy, mood, metabolism, and even protect your milk supply. You'll learn common mistakes that moms make that actually cause exhaustion, mood swings, low milk supply, and weight loss resistance to become worse, things that moms don't even realize. And you'll learn the proven 3-step method to heal your hormones and metabolism after baby, so you can go from surviving to thriving postpartum. Plus, as a free gift, you'll get my postpartum snack guide when you come hang out with us. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes to save your seat today. Spots are limited. See you there. What were some things besides breath work, which I've done before and it's really, really helpful? What other things really helped you throughout your first few years as a mom? Really regulate your emotions and be just more patient and present with your kiddos.
Yeah. One of the things that made a huge difference for me is acceptance. Now, before I had kids, I had come across Gabby Bernstein, and I heard her say a few times, maybe more than a few, like, surrender, you know, you just need to surrender. And just context, in case I didn't make this clear at the beginning, I was control freak, high functioning anxiety, perfectionist, like worrier. What do you mean surrender? Like, I don't understand how to do that.
Right. Makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. So I didn't quite understand then, but what I learned was surrender. The way that I think about it now is stop fighting life. Stop fighting life. And sometimes when I've said that to people, they're like, what? Fighting life? So I'll just speak to myself. If something would go wrong, then I would say things and believe things like, this shouldn't be happening. I don't want this to be happening. And essentially resisting anything not going according to plan.
Yeah.
You get to choose if you resist it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a fear that comes up for people is, if I don't want it to be better, then I'm just going to resign to the way that things are. And I don't want things to be as they are. But that is not true.
Right.
When you are fighting life, like maybe your partner is not helping in the way that you want, or your kid, your child, your baby, your infant is crying more than you want to, or you have to cut out food because something with your milk supply isn't, any of these. When you are resisting it and fighting it and wishing that it wasn't happening, your energy is focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brain literally does not have the available resources that it needs to be able to problem solve effectively,
Mm-hmm.
and to come up with creative ideas and to be innovative and to think with a clear mind.
Yeah.
It's more in a defensive state.
Right.
So I want to share the moment that this really clicked for me, because I'm hoping that the way that I'm describing it will help a lot of people, because the way that it was described to me, I was like, I don't get this. So, a metaphor is, think about one of those Chinese finger traps.
Oh,
I think
yes.
everybody still
Yes.
knows what they are, right? Okay. So, resistance is, you've got your fingers in there and you're pulling. That is resistance.
Yep.
And acceptance is when you just push them together and then you're free.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally how it works. So the moment that it clicked for me, I was at NASA. My oldest was 9 months old, and she was at the daycare on site. And I got in my car and I looked, and it said, you've got, I think it was like 60 miles left to the tank. And I'm like, okay, I live 40 minutes away. I'm not going to stop at the gas station when she's in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So you know where this is going, right?
Sure do.
So I picked her up. We got on the interstate and I ran out of gas for the very first time. So I'm on the side of the road, and the old me would have beat myself up. You saw that your gas light came on. You passed a gas station. You could have stopped. Now your baby has to sit in the heat and you don't have AC. You live in Florida. Come on. Why, all of these things.
Right.
And this is so common for people to do, because they think that they have to beat themselves up in order to improve and change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true.
Yep.
What the new me did, and this is literally where it clicked, is I made a phone call. I got out of my car, got her out of her car seat. We sat in the back seat and we played.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
And I was like, I was like literally mind blown emoji, like, oh my God, everything has just changed for me because something quote unquote bad happened, and I don't have to let it impact the rest of my day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to let it impact this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is surrender.
Right. Well, and it still gave you like a valuable lesson.
Yeah. Haven't done that again.
Right. I was going to say, I bet you haven't done that again.
Nope.
And that's the thing. It's like how we perceive events happening to us or for us is so crucial. And right when you were talking, it made me think of like a lot of postpartum body image struggles. A lot of moms think, I need to beat myself up. I need to tell myself, you're lazy.
Yes.
You can't fit into this, and the more I beat myself up, that will somehow motivate me to make changes. And surrendering, accepting where you're at, does not mean complacency. And I loved that you talked about that. It's like, no, you're just saying, this is where I'm at. This is where my body's at. What can I do in this moment that will make my body, make my mind feel good physically, emotionally? And then what can I learn from this circumstance,
Yes.
And that's so, so, so important because, yeah, exactly. And something I just actually was talking to one of our coaches a mutual coach that you and I have recently, and I perceived a situation and it was like really working me up. And she's like, Brooke, you're getting so worked up because you're perceiving the situation so differently than other people would have perceived the situation. And she's like, you can't control other people's emotions. And the more that you try to do that, the more that you're getting frustrated. And it was like also that surrendering piece of, yeah, you know what? I will be misunderstood, or, you know, I'm not going to be perfect, or things, you know, things can happen. But how we perceive the, you know, thing that happens, the event is so important, because her and I were talking, and she's like, this event could happen to 10 different people, and all 10 people are going to have very different perceptions of what happened, who said what, who did what, you know, and that was just very eye-opening for me of, she's like, you don't have to perceive this situation in this way, but you're choosing to. And is that helping you? And it was like,
I love that.
No, this is not helping me. And so when our baby is not sleeping through the night, instead of, you know, being like, oh, I'm so annoyed, they just won't sleep, I hate this. You know, what if we said, oh man, it's kind of a bummer that they're up again. What can I do for me right now to help ease my anxiety? So for me, actually, whenever my kids would wake up in the middle of the night, I would shut my eyes. I would turn on a meditation, sometimes like a sleep meditation. And then I would just make my environment super relaxing, not stimulating, no cell phones, no TV, nothing like that. And I would,
so important.
And I would make the feeding experience as peaceful as I could. So it's like, okay, I'm up right now. I don't want to be up, but what can I do for my body? And so just deep breathing and meditations, for me, that was something so simple, so easy that I could do for myself. And then when my baby was done feeding or I was done pumping, it was very easy for my body to just fall back asleep naturally. And so
I love that.
Another mom could perceive that and say, oh my gosh, my kid's such a terrible sleeper. I need to sleep train them now. I need to fix this problem. I need to do all this. And instead, what if you looked at this situation and said, yep, like they need to eat. That's great that their body is telling them that they, you know, need to eat right now. Great. What can I do for me in this moment? And I think that is just, it's so important how we perceive different things. I love that whole idea of surrender, I think, is something that moms all struggle with this. And I think the more kids, I don't know if you felt this way, like going from 1 to 2 kids, but I felt like going from 1 to 2, I was forced to surrender certain things because you're like, there's just stuff I can't, if I'm holding a baby and then my toddler's getting into something, like I physically can't do both. So I do feel like as you have more kids, especially like going from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, you do kind of have to physically surrender to certain things because you're like, I literally can't do it all. There's no human can do it all. So, I think that's great too.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up like the meaning that we put on it, because so many people don't think about that or don't know that you are never responding to anything in the world. Never. You are always responding to the meaning that you put on it. And that's why we see people have the exact same experience. Maybe they were, 2 people are at your house visiting you postpartum, they leave and they have 2 completely different perceptions because their mind put different meaning on it. And so you get to choose. Am I going to buy into this? Am I going to change the meaning? Am I just going to like, oh, okay, just let that thought pass by? Because something else that you said, when you were talking about sleep, I remember having a client who this actually triggered a lot of feelings of incompetence for her because her baby continued to wake up through the night until almost 2 years. And so I don't know at what point she started thinking I must be doing something wrong. And then that caused all kinds of anxiety. And not to say that like, if you want to sleep train, you know, if you want to hire a sleep consultant, hire a sleep consultant.
Totally.
Not, you know, if you don't, that's great too.
Right.
There's no right or wrong there.
Yep.
Just notice what meaning you are putting on situations. Notice I get to choose. And when you stay in acceptance and surrender, you free up your mind to figure out clearly, how do I want to handle this? Just like you did, Brooke, you're like, what would feel good for me is a meditation and and then you felt like calm and you did some breath work and then you're like, oh, okay, now I can fall asleep so much easier, which is beautiful.
Something else that comes up for a lot of moms that I talk to are things like postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, intrusive thoughts, and just feelings of overwhelm. What would be one or two things that you would tell a mom who is struggling with some of these things, especially postpartum anxiety and intrusive thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with intrusive thoughts. So, a lot of times, what I hear people do when they have intrusive thoughts is they try to push away the thoughts and like minimize them and make them go away, make them stop. And when we resist the thoughts, we try to control them, it can actually make it happen stronger and more
Yeah.
frequently. And so I have the opposite approach is what if you looked at this part of you as a friend that is trying to protect you? Maybe she's got terrible advice and it's like, why would you say these things?
Yeah.
That's true. But if this part of me has good intentions, if this was a friend, what might I say to her? Like, thank you for bringing that up, which feels awkward. Like, how many people think intrusive thoughts? Like, basically none, right? So thank you for bringing this up. I know that you're trying to protect me. Is there anything else you need me to know? So you're actually giving space to the part of you that's scared.
Yeah.
To the part of you that's anxious. And just giving yourself that space can help the intrusive thoughts go away. And I know personally for me, and this was not for my whole life, not always with intrusive thoughts, but I noticed a pattern and I haven't heard anybody else talk about the pattern. I a lot of times get intrusive thoughts when everything is going well.
Yeah, same.
And it and it's like there's this part of my mind that's like, oh my gosh, when is the shoe going to drop? I've got to like start throwing out these wild things because And so now at this point, I've just recognized, okay, I'm getting intrusive thoughts. Everything is going well. This part of me is just trying to protect me. And I do the same approach, see the intention, thank that part in those thoughts. Ask if there's anything else you want me to know. I find that that's useful to do in stream of consciousness journaling, but that, everybody doesn't like to journal. So it doesn't matter if you do it in your head too.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you said is so important because I think when we do have intrusive thoughts, like you said, it's uncomfortable. And so human nature, whenever we have an uncomfortable thought, we're like, push it away, ignore it. And like you said, it just what we resist persists.
Yes.
And it's not actually helpful. And so getting curious about these thoughts is really important. And I know I've shared this with you like off record, but something that I've struggled with is I have intrusive thoughts about my oldest son because we have so much trauma around his open heart surgery. And we've had several leukemia scares for him and, seeing him in the NICU and PICU and all go through all of this stuff immediately. Like if he gets a cold, if he has any type of rash, I immediately go to, oh my God, this is it. He has leukemia because we know he has like a 20 to 30% chance of developing leukemia. So it's like we're constantly, he had like a pre-leukemia as a baby. And so we're constantly on edge. Like if he has a fever with no unknown cause, certain rashes. And so for him, it's like, I have intrusive thoughts about him, but it's really interesting because I never have intrusive thoughts about my other son. I never worry about his health. He gets sick and I'm like, he's fine. And it's funny because I don't have intrusive thoughts about other people I care about, but then I also have the intrusive thoughts that come in with my husband because my husband has also almost died several times, been in the hospital, been in the ICU with blood clots and pulmonary embolism. And so for him, I immediately go to worst case scenario with him and my oldest son, but I don't do that for anybody else. And so that was something I got really curious about with my therapist. And we're like, well, like the intrusive thoughts are stemming from some past trauma that you've been through with these two people. And that's why you don't necessarily experience these intrusive thoughts with other people. But had I not, right. And I felt just validated in and of itself of, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is
Yes.
why I feel this way. And
Yes.
sometimes, and it was just like that curiosity of diving into it. Oh, that's so interesting that I feel this way about these two, but I don't really have intrusive thoughts about
Yeah.
my other, kiddo or any other person in my life. And so it is interesting to kind of lean into those thoughts a little bit
Hmm.
versus trying to avoid the
Yes.
uncomfortableness.
Which is common. Most people try to avoid, and it
For
makes,
sure.
yeah, it makes it worse. And it's totally understandable. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And honestly, this ties so much into like body image thoughts too. There's so
Yeah.
many times where a mom will be struggling with body image thoughts and she's like, I'm just going to pretend it's not there. I'm just going to tell myself I love my body. And it's like, that's not like ignoring that negative thought. Like we actually want to dive
Yeah.
into it. Like, where did we hear
Yeah.
this? Where do we believe this?
Yes.
I wonder what triggered this thought. We want to dive into
Is this
that.
even mine?
Is
Right.
this mine?
Is this mine?
Yes.
Because so often, especially with body image, it's not even
Yours.
your beliefs. It's not yours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, usually it's stemming from your mom
Mom.
or dad.
Yes.
Typically, I would say in
Yes.
90% of cases,
Yeah.
98% of
Mhm.
cases, it's one of your
Mhm.
parents. Or if you don't have, parents that you're close with, it's usually, your parental figure is
Yeah.
playing the biggest role in that. And, we can't blame our parents. Like they were doing the best they could with
They
what they
were.
had. And
They
they lived
were.
in a different time.
Different times. Yes. And I'm sure
Different
that
times.
they broke cycles as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Any tips or things that you just feel like is really important for a new mom to know, especially?
Yeah. I'll say this because I think that if you've resonated with this episode, you may struggle to ask for help because it may feel vulnerable. And
Mm,
if you're a high achieving perfectionist type, you've always done it all.
yeah.
And so being newly postpartum, a lot of women, they just can't anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I did struggle with this. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted my husband to just anticipate my needs. And
Yeah.
so you may also feel like I just want my partner to anticipate my needs, to know what needs to be done. And I remember this moment where I said something to my sister-in-law. I'm like, he just became a parent just like me. Like, if I should know, he should know. And she's like, Steph, I get it. Make a list and he will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then I realized, I'm like, why haven't I done that? Why am I just like wanting him? And it's so easy to go like, well, you should just offer, or you should just know, just like I do. And to some extent, maybe that's true. But is
Mm-hmm.
that getting me the outcome that I want?
Right.
No, it wasn't getting me the outcome that I wanted. And as soon as I made that dang list, he did.
Got done.
It got done. And then we work together as time passed so that he has certain things that he does as a dad, and that
Mm-hmm.
way I'm not like always giving him a list, because I know sometimes the brain can make these conclusions. This is more of the meaning that we put on it. Well, like if I'm doing that now, I'm going to have to do that the rest of my life, and I don't want to do that. What if that's not true? What if that's just a
Mm-hmm.
fear?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Oh,
if you
that's so
feel
true.
overwhelmed, ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so important. Part
Yeah.
of the surrender conversation.
Yes. Yes.
Can you share where everybody can find you and work with you and how they can work with you?
Yes, absolutely. So the best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Stephanie Lopez. You'll put that in the show notes, I'm sure.
Yep.
And I have a free training class on how to ditch anxiety. And I've been told from people who watch it that they've never seen anxiety described in this way, and that it's quite eye-opening for them. And I'll just give you the link for that and to put in the show notes too, Brooke.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, go give her a follow. Oh, and tell them about your podcast too.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So if this resonated with you, you can check out my podcast, which is the Broken to Brave podcast with Dr. Steph, and send me a DM on Instagram. And I love chatting with people.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing all of your wisdom for our new mamas.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Exercise is crucial for our overall mental and physical health, especially during pregnancy and postpartum. Something that has helped me stay really consistent with strength training and yoga at home during nap time is the Expecting and Empowered workout app. I love that I can choose how many weeks pregnant or postpartum I am, and the app tells me exactly what to do. Plus, there's cardio, yoga, and strength training options for new moms and moms to be. You can go ahead and click the link in the show notes to get 7 days free and also save 15% off the annual option when you use promo code Nutrition for Mamas. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to the Postpartum Shift podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with a mom friend and leave a written review. This helps the podcast reach and help even more moms. Come say hi over on Instagram at Nutrition for Mamas.